So the proposed model of change based on all those learnings was that addressing violence against women needs a reduction in overall gender inequality. So it needs to be addressed within the gender inequality framework rather than as an issue by itself. Secondly, there is a need to identify clear steps of progression in terms of how we address those issues and what are we trying to achieve. A need for a clearly defined strategy in terms of addressing those issues. And thirdly, I think defining the objectives and outcomes at the very onset is quite critical. It's important that we know where we're heading, what we're trying to do. And it may take a while. You may need to do certain formative research work, some kind of community consultations, community conversations, to understand what are the issues facing people. But once it's defined, it needs to be defined both in terms of objectives, outcomes, as well as indicators. So if Ring the Bell was to be implemented in Pacific, it obviously needs to be contextualized. It may not be Ring the Bell, it may be something else. It needs to be implemented with local partners. And we think that Samoa is a good country to start with. I think Samoa can lead the way within the Pacific because of its high levels of awareness around gender issues already existing, and it needs to be built on. There are still challenges there. The Ministry of Women is quite strong. The media landscape within Samoa is quite vibrant. And then phase it out in different countries. And that's the model that Breakthrough uses in terms of mass media, leadership and training, community mobilization, research, and M&E. The mass media component of that particular design is important to build an identity. It's important to build a movement around which people are participating. The problem with doing, I won't say the problem, but the challenge with doing small community interactions and community mobilization activities in individual capacities is that there is no momentum, there is no critical mass that these activities gain. And if you want to gain a critical mass, you need to have a common branding, a common understanding, a common identity for the program that you're trying to implement. That mass media program needs to be supported by leadership and training. I was just having a discussion a while back with Sarah talking about media interventions and how they work. And I think it's important that there is an integrated approach towards media interventions, that it is led by partnerships, and that it involves people who are experts in the area to be able to implement them effectively. So leadership and training to address complexity of gender and inequality issues. The third key component is community mobilization efforts. And it is to bring together those education entertainment elements that are produced as part of mass media and the media messages that are produced, using the leaders to go out in the community and then generate community mobilization around those issues. So really it's an integrated approach in that sense. And underlying all of that is effective M&E and research. And the research does not need to come as an afterthought, it needs to be coming as a forethought at the start of the project, because it needs to be able to define what the objectives are, what is the change that we are seeking to make, to be able to measure it and to be able to see whether we are delivering on it or not. And finally, these are some of the projected numbers again in terms of what can be achieved. And if you look at those numbers, they are actually a replication of the project model. So the model of change, the theory of change that we are looking at each of those steps and seeing what we can achieve at each of those steps. So what is the population reached through the campaign? What is the reach of the campaign overall? What is the awareness level of the whole movement? Increasing the number of reported cases, changing attitudes around them, and then increasing men and women who seek action against violence against women. In the end, I would like to reiterate that gender is a complex issue. It is a relational issue. It is about men and women and including all of them together in a community setting. But it's also important that the interventions and the programs around this are scaled up, that it doesn't remain just a community issue, but actually becomes a national level issue, which can be addressed at the national level, which can bring in those policy changes, those practitioner level changes, organizational changes that we've all been talking about over the past 2 days. Thank you. I'll also like to play just a 1-minute clip of the Ring the Bell campaign. I think a lot of you have seen it, but probably some of you haven't. So just to show you what I was talking about. And again, this is in the Indian context. It might be different in different countries. So.
गई थी? कहाँ मर गई थी तुम?
सब्जी काट रही थी।
ये क्या? ये क्या है?
क्या?
दिखा नहीं देता तुम्हें क्या है? कपड़े ठीक से नहीं धो सकती तुम? शर्ट पे दाग है, दाग क्यों नहीं गया? रो मत।
मत मारो, मैं दोबारा धो दूंगी।
तेरे पास कुछ काम धंधा नहीं है? हैं? दिन भर बैठ के मैं तुम्हारी गलती। हाँ अंकल।
वो तुम्हारा पोस्ट कार्ड शायद कोई गलती से मेरे घर डाल गया था।
Bring domestic violence to a halt. Ring the bell.